The moment Marvel dropped the first Avengers Doomsday trailer, it felt like the beginning of something massive. But if this new leaked second trailer is even remotely close to the final cut, then the first trailer was only showing us the surface. Because this time, the focus isn't just on heroes assembling, it's about the man standing above every single one of them. A man who genuinely believes he's the victim. And everyone else is responsible for what happened to his world. The trailer wastes absolutely no time. Instead of opening with explosions or multiversal chaos, it begins in complete silence. We find ourselves inside Dr. Doom's castle. Not from the outside, but deep within its endless stone corridors. Every wall feels ancient. Every hallway carries the weight of history. The architecture isn't built like a futuristic fortress. It looks more like a kingdom that has survived countless wars, almost as if Doom doesn't see himself as a dictator, but as the rightful king of a broken reality. Then, we finally see him. Victor Von Doom slowly walks through the castle before reaching an enormous staircase. And this is where the trailer quietly places what could become one of the biggest emotional mysteries of the entire movie. Hanging above the stairs is a giant painting of a woman and a young child. Marvel intentionally keeps the camera on it for just a little longer than necessary. It doesn't feel like background decoration. It feels important, almost sacred. And while we're looking at that painting, Doom begins speaking. He says that his family died because of someone else's actions. That's an incredibly interesting choice of dialogue, because for years we've imagined Dr. Doom as the ultimate villain. But this trailer immediately asks a different question. What if, in his own mind, Doom isn't the villain at all? What if every decision he makes from this point forward is driven by a loss he believes could have been prevented? That single line completely changes the emotional tone of everything that follows, because once a villain believes he's delivering justice instead of revenge, defeating him becomes infinitely more complicated. Before the audience even has time to process Doom's words, the trailer jumps to something equally unexpected. The Fantastic Four finally arrive on Earth 616. Their ship tears through the atmosphere before entering Avengers territory, but the first person to greet them isn't Sam Wilson. It isn't Carol Danvers. It isn't anyone fans were expecting. It's Thor. He flies directly toward the spacecraft, Mjolnir in hand, but the real surprise is waiting inside. Standing there, holding another Mjolnir, is Steve Rogers. Not the Steve Rogers we last saw quietly living out his life after Avengers Endgame. This Steve looks different, older in experience, but not in appearance, more confident, more mysterious, and perhaps most importantly, potentially not even our Steve Rogers. The trailer never confirms his identity, but everything about his presentation immediately fuels one of the biggest theories surrounding this footage. Could this actually be Captain Hydra? If that's true, Marvel may have just introduced one of the most morally confusing versions of Steve Rogers we've ever seen. Because imagine seeing the face of the greatest Avenger, carrying values that may no longer belong to him. Without wasting another second, Thor, Steve, and the Fantastic Four head straight toward Avengers Tower. And that's where one of the most emotionally charged reunions of the trailer happens. Sam Wilson sees Steve, Bucky sees Steve. Neither of them reacts with joy. Neither of them smiles. Instead, they're confused, almost uncomfortable. It's the kind of reaction you only have when someone standing in front of you looks exactly like the person you lost, but something deep inside tells you that person isn't the same anymore. Marvel barely lets this moment breathe before Reed Richards gathers everyone together, and this scene could secretly be the true beginning of the movie's central conflict. Reed doesn't deliver hope. He delivers a deadline. According to him, the final incursion is already happening, and they have less than 24 hours left to stop it. That one sentence instantly raises the stakes beyond anything we've seen before in the MCU. This isn't another alien invasion. This isn't another Infinity Stone hunt. This isn't even Kang trying to manipulate time. Entire universes are literally running out of time. Every second now matters. Every decision becomes irreversible. And every alliance suddenly feels necessary. Right in the middle of all this urgency, the trailer slows down for an unexpectedly emotional exchange. Steve Rogers and Yelena Belova finally speak. Not about strategy, not about doom, not even about the incursion. They talk about Natasha Romanoff. For a brief moment, the fate of existence disappears into the background, and we're reminded that behind every superhero is someone still carrying old scars. Steve appears to reassure Yelena, trying to help her process Natasha's sacrifice from a perspective only he can offer. Whether Yelena accepts those words or not, the conversation adds a human layer to a story otherwise dominated by multiversal stakes. Soon after, the heroes split into two different spacecraft, suggesting that stopping the crisis will require multiple missions unfolding at the same time. Yet the trailer quietly plants another mystery. One of those ships appears to be observed from the shadows by Dr. Doom, or perhaps someone wearing a mask tied to his cause. The identity isn't confirmed, but the implication is unsettling. Before the battle has even begun, Doom may already know exactly where his enemies are going, and exactly how to stay one step ahead. From there, the trailer shifts into a rapid montage that feels less like random action and more like pieces of a giant puzzle. Talocan flashes across the screen. Yelena clashes with Mystique. Nightcrawler launches himself at Reed Richards. Shang-Chi faces Gambit. Cyclops unleashes an optic blast toward the Mjolnir-wielding captain. Between the fights, Beast and Reed discuss the growing danger of the incursions, reinforcing the idea that the scientific minds of multiple universes may be the only hope of understanding what's happening before it's too late. And then another striking image appears: Magneto, not hiding, not retired, fully suited up. That detail alone suggests he's preparing for a conflict worthy of his full power. If the theory surrounding this footage proves accurate, his journey could extend far beyond his own universe, eventually crossing paths with Deadpool, Wolverine, and even Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man during a massive confrontation involving iconic villains like Dr. Octopus and Green Goblin. It's an ambitious possibility, but one that would dramatically expand the scale of the story if Marvel chooses to go in that direction. One scene may quietly connect several of those threads. Inside the Baxter building on Earth, A28, the X-Men and Gambit are gathered around Mjolnir resting on a table. Rather than treating it like a weapon, they seem to study it as if it carries answers. One interpretation is that Gambit's presence there means he emerged from the events of Deadpool and Wolverine and found his way to Charles Xavier's team, creating an unexpected bridge between stories that once felt completely separate. Another detail stands out as well. Magneto appears to have his hand in a cast, which could hint that he's already fought Dr. Doom once and paid a heavy price for it. If that's true, the gathering inside Baxter Building isn't just another meeting, it's a war council where Avengers, Fantastic Four, and X-Men begin planning a united assault on Doom's castle. But perhaps the most fascinating connection in the entire trailer comes from Dr. Doom himself. His opening words and his final words both seem directed toward Steve Rogers. That framing doesn't feel accidental. It invites a theory that Doom believes Steve's decision to travel into the past after Endgame caused a chain reaction that ultimately fractured the multiverse, leading to the loss of Doom's family. Whether that belief is true or tragically misguided remains to be seen, but it gives Doom a deeply personal reason to target Steve above everyone else. Then comes the final line after the title card. One day, you'll forgive me. On the surface, it sounds like a threat wrapped in confidence, but through the lens of Secret Wars, it takes on a completely different meaning. If Doom succeeds in creating Battleworld and rewriting reality, erasing memories in the process, then Steve may eventually awaken in a world where he no longer remembers the events that led them there. In that sense, Doom wouldn't be asking for forgiveness in the traditional way. He would believe that by erasing the past itself, forgiveness becomes inevitable. And if that truly is where this story is heading, then Avengers Doomsday isn't just setting up one final battle, it's laying the foundation for something much bigger. A future where the barriers between Avengers, X-Men, Fantastic Four, and Spider-Man no longer exist. A single, unified Marvel universe born from the ashes of the multiverse itself. If this trailer is pointing in that direction, then every scene we've discussed isn't just exciting on its own. Each one becomes another carefully placed piece of the road leading towards Secret Wars and the complete rebirth of the MCU. That possibility also explains why the trailer constantly shifts between intimate conversations and massive battles. On the surface, it looks like Marvel is simply giving every major character a chance to shine. But when you slow these shots down and place them in order, a very different pattern begins to emerge. Almost every sequence feels like it's happening simultaneously. This isn't one team moving from location to location. It's multiple operations unfolding across different universes, all racing against the same deadline Reed Richards warned everyone about. The less than 24-hour countdown suddenly becomes much more than a dramatic line. It becomes the engine driving the entire story. Every fight, every conversation, and every decision is happening because there simply isn't enough time to solve one problem before another appears somewhere else in the multiverse. That urgency makes the Talocan sequence especially interesting. Marvel only gives us a brief glimpse, but even that short shot raises an important question. Why would Talocan become involved in a war that seems focused on incursions and Dr. Doom? The simplest answer is that there are no neutral territories anymore. If entire universes are beginning to collide, then every kingdom, every nation, and every hidden civilization is automatically part of the conflict, whether they choose to fight or not. Talocan has always remained isolated from the surface world, protecting its people above everything else. But when reality itself starts breaking apart, isolation no longer guarantees survival. If Doom is collecting power from multiple universes or positioning his forces across strategic locations, then Talocan may represent one of the final strongholds capable of resisting him. That tiny glimpse tells us this isn't just Earth's battle anymore. Every civilization in existence has something to lose. The same idea becomes even clearer when we look at the Yelena and Mystique fight. At first glance, it's simply a cool action sequence between two skilled fighters, but think about who Mystique is. She's never been defined by brute force. She's defined by deception, by infiltration, by making people question who they can trust. That immediately changes how we interpret this fight. Is Yelena actually confronting Mystique? Or did Mystique spend days, maybe even weeks, secretly manipulating events before finally being exposed? Marvel has used identity twists before, but with Mystique involved, every previous scene suddenly becomes questionable. Could someone we've already seen inside Avengers Tower actually be Mystique in disguise? Could one of the emotional conversations we've trusted already be built on a lie? That's exactly the kind of paranoia a multiversal war should create. When realities collide, trusting appearances becomes almost impossible. Nightcrawler's confrontation with Reed Richards adds another fascinating layer. Reed isn't known for charging into fights. His greatest weapon has always been his mind. So seeing Nightcrawler attack him immediately suggests that something has gone terribly wrong. Either Reed possesses information someone desperately wants to stop from spreading, or Nightcrawler himself is acting under circumstances we don't fully understand. Maybe he's protecting his own universe. Maybe he's been manipulated. Or maybe this isn't even a fight between enemies at all. Sometimes the fastest way to save someone is forcing them to move. Marvel has become incredibly good at taking a few seconds of footage and making audiences believe one thing while the full movie reveals something completely different. That single exchange between Reed and Nightcrawler could end up carrying an entirely different meaning once we finally see the surrounding context. Then there's Shang-Chi versus Gambit. And this matchup feels deliberate rather than random. These are two characters who represent completely different corners of Marvel's world. One emerged from the mystical legacy of the Ten Rings, the other belongs to the mutant side of the Marvel universe. Bringing them together isn't simply fan service. It's visual proof that the old divisions inside Marvel no longer matter. Avengers, mutants, cosmic heroes, mystical warriors, they're all being pulled into the same conflict. For years, fans imagined what it would look like when these franchises finally crossed paths. Now the trailer suggests those dream matchups won't just happen. They'll become necessary. Everyone is being forced onto the same battlefield, whether they were prepared for it or not. Cyclops firing an optic blast toward the Mjolnir-wielding Steve Rogers might be one of the trailer's biggest discussion points. Normally, seeing Captain America holding Mjolnir would instantly establish him as someone worthy of trust. That's exactly how in-game trained audiences to react, but Marvel knows we carry that emotional memory. If this really is a version like Captain Hydra, or simply a Steve shaped by radically different experiences, then Mjolnir in his hand becomes psychologically confusing. It challenges everything we think we know about worthiness. Is this the same hammer from our universe? Does it follow the same enchantment? Or are we looking at an entirely different version whose rules are completely different? The trailer refuses to answer any of those questions, which is exactly why that single shot feels so powerful. Another scene that deserves much more attention is the conversation between Beast and Reed Richards. Marvel intentionally pairs together two of the smartest minds across different universes. That's rarely done unless the scientific explanation behind the conflict is about to become extremely important. They aren't discussing strategy. They're discussing incursions themselves. That tells us the heroes may have finally reached a terrifying realization. Stopping Doom alone might not actually save reality. If the incursions have already reached a critical point, then defeating the villain doesn't automatically repair the damage already done. Imagine spending an entire movie trying to stop one enemy, only to discover that reality continues collapsing even after he falls. That's a terrifying possibility, and it would perfectly justify why Secret War still needs to happen afterward. Now let's go back to Magneto, because his appearance may actually reveal more than most viewers initially noticed. The trailer doesn't present him as someone reluctantly joining the fight. He looks prepared, determined, focused. That's significant because Magneto rarely follows anyone else's orders. He acts according to what he believes is necessary for mutant survival. If someone like Magneto decides to stand alongside the Avengers and the Fantastic Four, then whatever threat he's facing must be beyond ideology, beyond politics, and beyond old rivalries. According to your theory, his journey eventually leads him alongside Deadpool and Wolverine into Tobey Maguire's universe, where an enormous battle involving Dr. Octopus and Green Goblin erupts across New Jersey. If that's accurate, then Marvel isn't simply revisiting nostalgic characters. It's using them to demonstrate that every universe, no matter how separate it once seemed, has become part of the same war. The multiverse isn't expanding anymore. It's collapsing inward. That idea also gives much more meaning to Gambit's appearance inside the Baxter Building. Ever since Deadpool and Wolverine, fans have wondered what became of the alternate characters left behind after those events. If Gambit truly escaped through one of those portals and eventually found Charles Xavier and the X-Men, then Marvel has quietly connected a storyline many viewers assumed was self-contained. More importantly, it suggests the portals aren't random anymore. People aren't simply jumping between universes by accident, they're gathering. Survivors are finding each other. Leaders are beginning to compare what they've witnessed. And the Baxter Building transforms into something much bigger than Fantastic Four headquarters. It becomes the command center where knowledge from different realities finally comes together. One tiny visual detail inside that sequence could end up carrying enormous emotional weight: Magneto's injured hand. Most viewers might overlook the plaster because the trailer moves so quickly. But if that injury truly came from a previous encounter with Dr. Doom, then we're looking at evidence that Doom has already defeated one of Marvel's most powerful mutants before the main battle even begins. Magneto controlling metal has always been one of the most overwhelming abilities in Marvel history. If Doom can leave someone like Magneto wounded, that immediately changes how we measure his power. Suddenly, the heroes aren't preparing for a battle they expect to win. They're preparing for an enemy they've already learned to fear. And that's exactly why the planning sequence inside the Baxter Building may end up becoming one of the most important scenes in the entire movie. If you freeze those few seconds, it doesn't look like a typical superhero briefing. Nobody seems relaxed. Nobody looks confident. Reed Richards isn't standing there delivering an inspiring speech. Beast appears completely focused. Gambit is studying Mjolnir. Magneto is carrying visible signs of a previous battle. Every visual cue tells the same story. These aren't heroes deciding whether they should fight. They've already accepted that fighting is unavoidable. The only question left is whether they still have enough time to stop what's coming. That brings us back to Dr. Doom's castle, because the trailer creates a fascinating parallel between both headquarters. On one side, we have the Baxter Building filled with scientists, strategists, and heroes desperately trying to save every universe. On the other side sits Doom alone inside an ancient throne room that looks almost untouched by fear. Marvel intentionally contrasts those locations. The heroes are surrounded by urgency, clocks, and impossible calculations. Doom, meanwhile, appears completely calm. He isn't rushing. He isn't panicking. And whenever a villain shows absolute confidence, while every hero is running out of time, it usually means the villain already believes victory is inevitable. That's also why the mysterious masked figure watching one of the departing spacecraft deserves much more attention than it initially received. The trailer never confirms whether it's actually Doom or one of his loyal followers. But the implication is chilling either way. Every plan the heroes create may already be compromised before they even launch the mission. Think about Reed's warning again. Less than 24 hours remain. If Doom already knows where both teams are heading, then every second the heroes spend executing their strategy could actually be moving them closer to the trap Doom has prepared. It completely changes how we interpret those spacecraft. They don't just represent hope. They may also represent exactly what Doom wants. The TVA sequence pushes that uncertainty even further. For only a brief instant, we return to Loki's old home and then immediately cut to the TVA, where a blood-covered hand appears on the floor. Marvel deliberately avoids revealing whose hand it is, and that's exactly why fans immediately started analyzing every frame. But regardless of whose blood we're looking at, the message is unmistakable. The TVA, the organization that once existed outside normal time and reality, is no longer safe. If violence has reached the TVA itself, then the collapse of the multiverse has gone far beyond ordinary incursions. One of the last institutions capable of maintaining order may already have fallen. That possibility makes Loki's absence from the rest of the trailer even more suspicious. Since the ending of Loki Season 2, he has effectively become the Guardian holding together the branches of the multiverse. If reality is now collapsing despite his sacrifice, then two possibilities immediately emerge. Either Loki is being overwhelmed by forces beyond even his power, or someone has found a way to directly attack the very structure he's protecting. Neither possibility is good for the heroes. In fact, both suggest that Doom's ambitions extend far beyond conquering Earth. He may be targeting the very foundation of existence itself. Then we arrive at what could become one of the defining confrontations of the movie: Thor versus Dr. Doom. Marvel keeps the sequence surprisingly short, but the emotional weight behind it is enormous. Thor has fought gods, monsters, celestials, Hela, Thanos, and Gore. Every major chapter of the MCU has transformed him into one of its most experienced warriors. Yet when the trailer places him opposite Doom, something feels different. This doesn't look like another battle where raw strength decides the outcome. Doom isn't smiling. He isn't delivering a dramatic speech. He simply stands there with complete certainty. That confidence tells us he doesn't see Thor as an impossible obstacle. He sees him as another piece on the board. And perhaps that's exactly what separates Doom from every major MCU villain we've seen before. Thanos wanted balance. Kang wanted control over time. Ultron wanted forced evolution. But Doom appears to want something much more personal: control over reality itself. Not because he enjoys power, but because he believes reality failed him first. That difference is incredibly important because it transforms every heroic victory into a philosophical conflict. The Avengers aren't simply trying to stop someone from conquering worlds. They're trying to convince someone that his vision of saving existence is fundamentally wrong. The problem is, what if Doom genuinely has a point about the multiverse being broken? What if his solution is horrifying, but his diagnosis is correct? That's where his dialogue directed towards Steve Rogers becomes the emotional centerpiece of the trailer. Most viewers initially focus on the action, the cameos, and the battles, but Marvel quietly frames the entire trailer around one relationship: Doom and Steve. The first major line about Doom's family, the final line after the title card, both revolve around Steve Rogers. If your theory proves correct, then Doom doesn't see Steve as the greatest hero in history. He sees him as the man whose decision after Endgame triggered an irreversible fracture across the multiverse. We know Steve traveled back through time to live the life he never had. At the time, it felt like the perfect ending. But what if that choice created consequences nobody understood? What if every branch, every incursion, every collision between realities eventually traced back to that single moment? Whether that's objectively true or simply what Doom believes almost doesn't matter. Because villains don't need to be right. They only need to believe they're right. And once someone like Victor Von Doom convinces himself that Steve destroyed his family, every action he takes suddenly gains emotional logic. He's no longer chasing domination for its own sake. He's trying to correct what he sees as history's greatest mistake. That perspective also gives entirely new meaning to the painting inside Doom's castle. Earlier, it simply looked like a tragic memory. Now it begins to resemble the emotional core of his entire mission. Every hallway inside the castle, every army under his command, every battle he's preparing for, may ultimately exist because of the people shown in that single portrait. Marvel often humanizes its greatest villains by giving them one deeply personal loss. And if that's what this painting represents, then it explains why Doom carries himself less like an invader and more like a grieving king who believes the universe owes him justice. And then we reach the trailer's final words. One day, you'll forgive me. At first, it sounds almost compassionate. But once you connect it to the possibility of Battleworld, it becomes something much darker. Imagine Doom succeeds. Imagine the incursions consume reality. Imagine every surviving universe is merged into one carefully constructed world under Doom's control. Now imagine every hero wakes up with rewritten memories. No knowledge of the old multiverse, no recollection of the lives they lost, no understanding of the battles that came before. In that reality, Steve Rogers wouldn't consciously forgive Dr. Doom, he simply wouldn't remember a reason not to. That's what makes the line so disturbing. Doom isn't asking Steve for forgiveness. He's planning to create a world where forgiveness becomes unavoidable because the past itself has been erased. And if that's truly the direction Marvel is taking, then Avengers Doomsday isn't the ending of the multiverse saga. It's the moment the old Marvel universe finally dies, so an entirely new one can be born. A universe where the Avengers, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and Spider-Man no longer belong to separate timelines or isolated franchises, but stand together in one shared reality, setting the stage for the next era of the MCU.